Good morning all. Welcome to the AutoClerk City Ledger webinar. I'm Peter. I'm going to be your trainer this morning. A couple of attendees have not raised their hands. If you can hear me, please raise your hand to let me know. Perhaps the one attendee that hasn't raised their hand is not actually paying attention to the computer at this time. I'm going to ask you all to hold your questions till the end of the session, and I'll try and address as many as possible with whatever time we have left. I also want to let you know if you're experiencing any technical difficulty, if you'll please call the support line. That way it won't interrupt with the flow of what we have going on here, and then somebody from support will get in touch with me as regarding your technical issues. With that said, let's get this going. So this morning we're going to be talking about your city ledger, your accounts receivable. Basically, when you're extending credit to a direct bill client or to a negotiated company that you're giving room nights to. Let's start from the very beginning. In the beginning, we start with our city ledger. We're going to add a new customer. You go to city ledger, add a new customer. You're going to give the customer a 2-digit code. I'm just going to make up a customer here. I just landed a huge trucking company. I'm going to call it Dave's Warehouse. I'll explain direct bill, D for direct bill, U for dispute. We'll discuss dispute a little bit more in detail a little bit later, and H for house account, and I will also describe a house account and the use of a house account. Can be different for every operation, just to let you know. As far as the use of house accounts, so my example is strictly that, just an example. We're going to use for this one, we're going to use D for direct bill. I'm going to say attention accounts payable. Street is fill in all your appropriate information. One thing I would like you to make aware of, I had a customer or one of our clients that was using this slash symbol in their direct bill accounts, and it wasn't auto-populating the state when they said use company address in. So you do need to use a comma here to get the state to auto-populate into the address field when you're making reservations. Again, I'm just making up a company here just for practice purposes. So you enter all the company's contact information. The next field is interest charge. If you're going to be charging interest on past due amounts, you will enter that amount here. Let's say it's 1.5%. That would be this, right? I'm not going to use the field, but I was going to let you know that. Or some companies may even just charge 0.5% or something like that. And we'll discuss how charging on the past due amounts is involved later on. The one challenge I see with using interest or charging on past due amounts is that you need to re-invoice the client and then let the client know, and collections on the actual interest itself tend to be quite a challenge. But it is possible within the program, so I'm going to keep moving on just to keep the flow of the meeting going. Your next column, this will auto-populate as the client begins consuming room nights. It will actually literally let you know how much sales has been billed to this direct bill account, not necessarily if you have, let's say you also have a permanent reservation with them, but they're not all direct billed. That's not going to necessarily coincide. This is strictly what's been billed to the direct bill account in this field when it auto-populates. And then a credit limit. You can say to a customer, well, I don't want any of my customers accumulate more than $5,000 on their account before I'm going to suspend their account and make them bring it more current before they can continue to bill. Now, I would caution using this for someone like, let's say, corporate lodging, who tends to do high volume business and often gets high volume accounts going before they bring their balance down. But it is possible to do so. And it will literally, when it reaches that credit limit, put the account in suspense, and the account will no longer be able to be used for either guaranteeing reservations or as a payment type on in-house reservations. The next button is invoice with confirmation number. Some clients want to know the confirmation number of the client that was staying with you on the invoice. So if you check mark that, that's going to be included. Obviously, suspense or the suspend button is for a client that is a bad payer or you're having problems collecting from this account. You're going to suspend the account temporarily until you can get them brought up to current. Some hotels also have companies that provide a credit card to pay for bill stay, but they don't want the credit card charged every time. They want the credit card charged once a week. Well, you can create a direct bill account and use this button here, and then on a weekly basis, zero out the account using the credit card to pay off the direct bill charges that have been accumulated in the account. I always encourage using comment fields for stuff like email addresses and etc. And we hit OK, and we've created a new customer. It will ask us if we want to create another. Some companies do high volume, and they'll go in and enter several direct bills at the same time. But for the flow of this meeting, we're just going to keep going. The very next field is modify a customer. You have a customer that came in, they changed their street address. I'm going to use one of the accounts I've created for this. Nice generic account. And they move 2 buildings down. Simply go and make the appropriate changes you need to make. And again, here's your yearly total sales amount that has been billed to the customer so far, and simply hit OK. The next is delete a customer. In order to delete a customer, there can be no activity on the account. There can be no charges sitting on the account. There can be not a recent payment. Say you posted an account payment today, and it was actually zeroing out the account. It was past due, and it was on suspense. Well, unfortunately, that's still activity on the account, so you will not actually be able to delete that account until the following day until you've run through your night audit. For example, I'm going to use the account that I just created because it has no activity on it. So we'll go into Dave's Warehouse. They decided they were going with another hotel, and so we are going to go ahead and delete this account. Now, this does not make it disappear right away. If you'll notice, customer DW Dave's Warehouse is marked for deletion in night audit. The deletion will be ignored if there's any ledger activity on the folios or using the account. Now, what I'd like to show you with this, if I were to go into reservations, new reservations, and try to make a reservation, find my rates, and try and use that account, the system's going to tell me the customer is suspended. The exact same thing would happen if I tried to go in and modify a check and then use that as a payment type on the account. So that is delete a customer. So once again, in order to delete a direct bill account, there can be no activity on the account. If you've just finished zeroing out that account, you'll have to wait a day until the night audit processes before you can go back in and mark it for deletion. Our next area is list names and addresses. This is strictly to give you just a list of your names of your customers. I'm going to use the display option here. Now let's actually go to the options. So within this area, we can get it to include the company address. We can sort by various fields. There's a drop down to sort by company, by contact, by street, etc. Let's just say city for the sake of arguments. We go in, we display instead of print, and it will list it this way in a list. You can print this out so you have a full list of your direct bill clients. I'd also like to show you another option. If we just strictly go into display it, then it will come out in this way. So you can actually print your list of customers in a few different optional ways. If you have any questions about list names and addresses, I'll address those later on in this. Let's talk about our ledger cards with aging. This is your accounts receivable. So there's multiple ways to print this report. The first way would be all customers, and this would include any customers that don't have any activity at all. You also have an option of including any balances that are going on in-house, in other words, customers that are currently accumulating room and tax that are set up to be billed to a direct bill account. So we can go ahead and click on that and hit next. And as you will see, this will show us the account code, the account name. This here is the date of the most recent charge, the guest name, the room number, the amount charged. It will show you whether it's been invoiced or uninvoiced, the invoice number. Your invoice number is always going to be your 2-digit account code and the date that the invoice was printed. That'll help you with your collection side of things. Below that, you'll get your aging. You have the total amount on the account due, what's in current, what's in 30 to 60 days, what's in 61 to 90 days, what's in 91 to 120 days, and what's in 120 and over. At the bottom of the report, it will total for all accounts. So here is your current. Here is your 30 to 60, 61 to 90. Oh, I'm sorry. Here is your current. This is actually including in-house here. Current, 30 to 60, 61 to 90, 91 to 120 days, and over 120. Another way to print the report is by customer specific. So you may want to just print a larger card for within your actual direct bill file with your customer. Often what I see a property do is you have a guest that's being direct billed, so you'll have an invoice or, you'll have a folio printed from your front desk from their checkout. Those will collect together. Let's say you have 3 checkouts for the same direct bill on the same day. The following day, you go to print that invoice, you attach those copies, you send your customer a copy of the invoice with a copy of the folios, and you maintain a copy of your paperwork for your file yourself. That way when the check comes, you attach the check stub to that paperwork and include it in your night audit bag for payments received for the day. The other advantage of that, if they only pay one of the guest folios out of the 3, is you can pull out that guest folio, scratch it off the invoice on the top front page, and include that with the check and process it through. And we can discuss that a little bit further when I go a little bit more into detail on things. So let's just pick a customer and do a specific customer. Now you can also print a ledger card specifically just for a particular invoice, or you can do it for just the account as a whole. I'm just going to arbitrarily pick another account. I'm going to include the detail so that it will show me the guest names and dates, and hit next. This account happens to have no activity in it, so for training purposes, let's try and find one that actually has some activity in it so we can discuss it a little bit further. So once again, we're going to unclick all customers. We're going to pick which customer we want to take a look at their seed ledger card on. Let's try the app folio. If we had a specific date in mind, we would put in the specific date. We can do it without detail, so it's just a summary, or we can do it with detail. We go to next, we go to display, and it gives us the activity on the account, your account code, account name, the date of activity, what type of activity it is. As you see, this here is an unapplied payment. In the next activity, this is a guest folio number and last name. Here's the room number. No amount was charged to the direct bill. There is actually a 0 amount charged to the direct bill in this circumstance. And this is an uninvoiced client. So this client has not been invoiced yet for this. Okay. Moving on. Let's move on to our invoicing. Invoicing, depending on the volume of business you're doing with direct billing, it's something I would suggest consider being done more than once a week. Often I see properties that do it once a month. It can promote a problem on your collection side of things if you're not billing out regularly to your customers. Most properties that do a fair amount of direct billing business will at least bill 3 times a week. And, you know, we could talk about segregation of duties. Obviously, you don't want the person that is processing checks being the same person that's depositing the checks, but we know in the hotel industry that that's often the case. So, yeah, 3 times a week is generally a good idea depending on the volume of direct bill business you're doing. Some properties do such a high volume, it's necessary to bill on a daily basis. Plus, obviously, the more often you invoice, the more likely it is your money's going to come in on a more timely manner. So if we go to invoicing, we have an option of confirming each new invoice. We hit OK, and we have a choice of which customers we want to invoice. So let's just say we only want to invoice the loyalty rewards. We checkmark that customer. We have the option of going select all or select none. We also have the option, and I should let you know, when you see things like this in AutoClerk, these are actually buttons. You can click on this and it will sort things by that button. So if you're clicking on customer name, it's going to sort those alphabetically and numerically, depending on the situation. The same would happen for the comments, and that's going to do the same thing basically as well. So once again, we decided that we were going to invoice our loyalty rewards. We go to finished. We're going to go to print. And this will pull up a PDF for you, the reason why I use that. Save. And here is our invoice. Include the customer's name. If we had, and unfortunately I didn't actually have a customer that hadn't been invoiced with customers' guest folios on it, but it would include the date that the charge incurred onto the direct bill account, the room number, any comments, and the amount charged. These are actually debits and credits being applied to a customer. If you have a large customer, sometimes an Expedia, for example, invoice might be several pages. It will list the page number, the date that the invoice was printed, the account number, and the invoice number. And again, the invoice number is going to be the account code and the date that the invoice is printed. And that will be important when we get to billings in the next section. Moving on to billings, and let me cover one more thing in invoicing. It is possible in invoicing to just invoice all clients as a whole, which is what this just did. So if you're confident you have your invoicing you've gone through with sitting on your ledger card, you've printed up your ledger card, you know what's uninvoiced on there, you have all your folios and paperwork ready to organize there, you can just go ahead and print everything at once in one fell swoop. I had 2 other accounts that hadn't been invoiced, so if you'll notice here, this will go ahead and just automatically get those going. This one had no transaction. Oh, it does have transactions on it. We're going to talk about this when we talk about write-offs later on. This is actually a house account I set up for bad debt or for uncollectibles, for accounts that have basically gone so far out that you don't believe you're going to be able to collect on it. And here's our second client, and as I said, so here is a guest stay. They stayed in room 1 on March 14th. The direct bill was charged for room 118A, folio number 12002B, last name of clause. And again, when I showed you this before, there was a 0 amount charged to the direct bill. Well, that still shows up on your direct bill account, and we'll talk about cleaning up direct bill accounts later on. Okay, moving on. Historical payments. Let's say you go into a customer's account and you're looking for a folio, but it's no longer on that account. In other words, it's been misapplied to a check. Now, if you have similar rates for all your direct bill accounts, and let's say you have a customer that has 3 guests that stay with you regularly. So you might have Jackson, Smith, and Johnson stay every week, 2 or 3 days a week, and their billing amounts are very similar. It's the only difference on the city ledger card is dates. The person processing the check coming in is not paying attention to what they're doing as they're posting a payment, and they check mark the wrong folio transaction in the payment and actually pay off the wrong folio. You're trying to research this. So I'm going to use, I think, Brenda's account for this. Go into the account, you hit OK. You can print or display it, and it's going to show you all payment history. Now, the one we were in question about, we're going to say, is the March 4th, 2012, 1619. We think that was applied incorrectly. We have our check number there, so this amount here, and our check number here. We need to go research this. We don't want to go pull out our night audit bag and try and figure out what was applied on that folio. We're looking for a faster way to figure out what exactly was applied to that check number. We escape out. We're going to go to Utilities. We're going to go to Historical Data. Put in the month and year that we're talking about. We're going to go to Find. We're going to look for CL Payment, standing for City Ledger Payment. It's going to show basically all City Ledger payments, and this was going to account LP, which is not the one I was looking for. So if I use Repeat Find, I can continue to find. Now, I'd also like to show you the Jump button. If I recall correctly, that transaction occurred on March 4th. So if I put in 04, I can jump to March 4th and continue to look for my. Now that might be the transaction. It doesn't look like to me because I remember the amount being 1619, but I am still curious what was going on with payments on that account for that day. So it might be useful for me to show that folio. So if I go to Show Folio, and Display or Edit, Preview, I'm going to use Preview. It will show me exactly what was applied. This is the same thing that prints when you post a payment. But this is not the transaction I was looking for. So I repeat my find again. Show Folio, and again, I can tell this is a 0. I don't see my 1619 on here, but just for due diligence, I'm going to take a look again. We go back to Preview. So as I said, this is what prints out when you pay off a City Ledger account. So it will show you what was applied to where. This is this direct bill account on March 4th. There was a payment of $119.66 applied. That still isn't quite the correct transaction, so I'm going to repeat find one more time. And there, I finally found the transaction I'm looking for. I go to Show Folio. I go to Preview. And there's the activity I'm looking for. The check paid for clause. There was an unapplied payment applied to it. And it cleaned off the accounts for this amount. So that's how you research. And once again, let's cover that one more time. If you're researching a check or a historical payment for a City Ledger account, you go to your Utilities, Historical Data, the month and year you're looking for, which for us it was March 2012, and it is month specific, and then the search is using this here, CL payment. If you have questions about that further, we can try and address those at the end. Moving forward, post a payment. I'm going to pull up my aging, and we're going to post a regular payment. I just received a check in the amount of $170.95 from account AI, Acme Incorporated. I put in the account. I could put in the invoice number. For example, I know this invoice number, so if I put in 042514, it's going to direct me right to it. Checks are basically considered cash in most operations. I put in the net amount. My check number is 123456. I go to the next button. It is already highlighted. If there was multiple transactions within this account, I may want to select none and only select the exact transaction. If you'll notice down below, you have your total selected, your gross amount, and what it needs to equal. You will need to get that to equal 0 in order to apply a payment properly. So if you notice when I check mark the payment for Mr. Blow, it zeroes out the amount. I hit finish, and this is going to provide me that printout I was showing you that we find if we're looking through historical data. This is the exact printout that you would apply. We would have Mr. Blow's folio attached to a invoice number 042514 or AI 042514, and the folio, and then we would attach this to it and include it with our payments for the day for our night audit pack. Let's post a payment. Let's say somebody sends you a check, but it doesn't cover the full amount. I got a check from another one of my Acme companies. It's for a Mr. Joe, folio number 14001X, transaction date of April 25th. However, the actual bill amount was $170.95, but the company is only paying me $95. We go to post a partial payment. We pick our customer, which in this case is 01 for me. You can pick a specific date range to weed out if the direct bill account has volume of folios and transactions with it. You can specify your parameters so you don't have to sort up and down through all the folios and worry about misapplying a payment. I would like to caution you right now, take a second to step back. Your accounts receivable is a very important thing, right? And so AutoClerk is designed that accounts receivable is permanent transactions. If you post a transaction in accounts receivable, it's not reversible per se. You can try and get it back onto your account. There's a couple of ways to work around, as some of us in the industry would say, a couple of ways to skin the cat. But you need to be very cautious while you're posting payments in your accounts receivable, and it should generally be one person's duty on property. It shouldn't be anybody at the front desk can do it, and et cetera. There should be one person responsible for accounts receivable. There's a couple of reasons behind that. One, you want to have somebody that's real comfortable with this aspect of the program, and they're used to working with it. Two, you want to make sure you have consistency as far as the way you're processing payments within your operation. So let's continue on. I think I said I was posting a $95 payment to this account. Pay type will be cash. Which, by the way, whenever you see a drop down in AutoClerk, you have the option to just enter in if you know where you're going. And you don't have to use the drop down menu. I said I was applying it to 140 01X. So I'm going to check mark that transaction. It's going to leave me a balance of $75.95 on the account, or on that particular folio. I hit finished, and then I say, no, I'm not doing another one. Notice how nothing printed on this one. We did not pay off a folio, nor did we pay off an invoice. So there really isn't anything to print because we only partially paid it. Adjustments. Again, caution here. Posting adjustments to direct bills can often be the inappropriate way of adjusting a direct bill account. Often, let's use an example. Let's back this up. Let's say Mr. Blow was charged the wrong, the folio that we just made a partial payment was charged the wrong room rate, which occurs at times, right? We go to our historical folios and we go for April. We look for Mr. Blow. We go to search, find, put in the last name, hit OK. We discover that he has actually been charged the incorrect amount. We want to post a correction to that. Go to post. If we click on the room rate that we determine is incorrect, if we hit the adjust button off to the right, it'll automatically go through the process of adjusting it fully off. Now we can change this amount. Let's say he was charged $45 more than he was supposed to. The room rate was supposed to be $100, not $145. Going to add our own note to indicate what we're doing. Add to list. Now, this question often comes up when you're posting room and tax. What we are doing is adjusting off part of a room night, so we definitely do not want to reduce our room count here. If I was indeed adjusting off the whole $145, then I may want to say yes, because I am actually losing that room night. So if you ever have questions about whether to increase or decrease the room count, it doesn't hurt to call the support desk as far as an explanation as far as what's going on there. But once again, if you're only taking part of a room rate off, there's no reason to decrease your room count. Or if you are adjusting a full room night off, you may want to decrease your room count. Either consult with your manager or go ahead and give the support desk a call. So we're going to say no here. That automatically posted the tax as well. Now this is a one-sided transaction. If I were to try and close or say OK here, it's not going to do anything because my transactions must equal 0. I still need to refund the direct bill. So if I go to AI, I'm going to put in a negative amount here. This was a discount to a room rate. Make some indication of what you're doing to the account. Add to list, and OK. And then obviously we'd want to print this for our auditor. Just shows you the new bill for the folio. When you're posting a correction in historical folios, that will show up as a ticket on your M1. So rather than using the adjust button when you're actually needing to correct room rate, that would be the proper way to handle that with a direct bill. I want to go ahead and take a look at the city ledger card for that account now. And I definitely want to include the detail. There were a lot of strange transactions on this account. If we go to the account, oh, did I refund the wrong account? Look at that. Well, that's going to bring us to our next section. The next thing I want to discuss with you is an intercity ledger transfer. I made a mistake. That was not actually where I wanted that discount to go, that refund to go. So that was AI. But where I really wanted it to be was 01, not Acme Incorporated, Acme Supply. This intercity ledger transfers allows you to transfer transactions. In other words, a guest folio that was checked out and charged to the direct bill account, an unapplied payment that was posted to the wrong account, any transactions that would be a check mark once you go into the city ledger card itself. So if I check mark this transaction, and again, I can sort by these buttons up above. I'm going to go to finish. And that will transfer that credit balance over to the other city ledger account. We go to our city ledger cards with aging. We're going to look specifically at 01. Include details so that we can see all the strange transactions that are on the account. And I'm sorry, I believe I just had some technical difficulty there. So this account has several transactions going on it, and it actually has a credit balance right now. Let's say we want to clean some of this off. Notice how we have a $500 debit and a $500 credit, right? We don't want to see that on here because all these credits and debits are making it confusing on what's actually left on the account. So we actually want to clean this up, getting rid of those equal debits and credits, right? We are going to post what's called a zero payment. And this is what I call AR cleanup. If we go to post a payment, we're going to put in the account number. We don't need to worry about the invoice number. We're going to use cash. But again, we're posting a zero payment, so don't worry about this affecting your bank deposit or anything for the day. The net amount is going to be 0. And we can put in something to the effect of DB cleanup, or we can say AR cleanup. Whatever you want to do to give yourself some sort of indication of what you are performing. And again, when you have one person functioning this, these kind of notes will let them know what they were doing, and you'll have consistency within your accounts receivable. When you go to select none, I'm going to apply this $500 to this $500, one credit and one debit. If you'll notice at the bottom, total selected is 0, gross is 0, equals 0. I go to finished. If I were to print this, it would look like this. And this, again, would show up in my historical data for the month that it was applied. Now, talking about adjustments. I have an account that has a balance going to it that I really just want to clean out. So I'm going to use my LP account. Again, you can specify by a specific date range to narrow or widen your parameters. The balance actually is a credit balance, and I want to zero out the account or get rid of the account. So I'm going to be actually posting a credit. A charge to the account. Go to continue. If I don't check any of the transactions, it won't allow me to continue. So I'm going to apply the 20 to the 20, giving us a 0 transaction. We hit finished. No. If we go back and look at the card now, The adjustment shows up on the account. It doesn't necessarily make the credit balance disappear. It's not like posting a zero payment. The adjustment is just posting an adjustment onto the account. In order to make the debit and the credit disappear, again, we would need to post a zero payment. So we're done with this account. We're not using this account anymore. We've adjusted it off, brought it down to zero. It has a zero balance. We want to go ahead and clean it out. Again, we go to post a zero payment. Post a payment. Put in your account number. Don't worry about the invoice date, but you can if you know specifically where you're going. Zero is the amount. Indication of what you're doing. We got everything check marked. We want to make it all go away. Total selected to zero. Gross amount is zero. Equals zero. We hit finish. This will show up in our historical data. And as you will now see, we go to the ledger card. We pick our particular customer. And display. The account's zeroed out. So let's say we're done with this account. I don't need this direct bill account anymore. I'm going to go to delete a customer, go to LP, hit OK. And as I told you, we just posted a payment to this account. Even though the account was zeroed out, we actually had posted adjustment and a payment to this account today, so it will not allow us to delete this account. It has activity on it. If we were to run an audit and then go to perform the same function, we would be able to delete this account. The other thing I wanted to show you was we made a folio correction. I believe it was to account 01. We did it in today's transactions. That actually showed up on the account today. The refund to DB is right there on the account. Let's say we wanted to clean this account up a little bit, just to see what our actual credit balance is, and just in case. So obviously this customer has overpaid us. If we went to post a payment, we put in the account number. I'm going to use cash as payment type. We'll leave the payment type as 0. We have the one charge. We want to apply as much of that as possible to bring that down. If we go to finish, it's not going to allow us to do that. However, because our credits did not meet the debit amount. However, if I wanted to apply this unapplied payment to Joe, and I check these two transactions, notice how we don't have a 0 at the bottom. I go to finish. It's going to post the remaining amount as an unapplied payment to the account. So if I hit yes, and I go to display, Joe has now been paid off. He is no longer sitting on the account. And we have applied the $250 credit. The remaining amount, the $79.05 that is remaining on there, is now applied on the account as an unapplied payment. And I will show you that. So we now have basically unapplied payment sitting on the account. Okay. We've covered interstudy ledger transfer. The next section will be post-monthly interest. Notice the message here. Incorrect postings can be very difficult to correct in this function. You want to make sure that you know what you're doing before you start. It's literally telling you, be cautious. You're talking about posting interest on your accounts receivable here. Please be very cautious of what you're doing and have somebody that knows what they're doing performing the task. If we go to yes, we can pitch a particular account. Let me see if I have an account on my aging that's outstanding. This is not the best account for example purposes, but we'll keep going. Oh, sorry, we need to put in a charge type here. So I didn't actually have any of my direct bill accounts set with percentages in. And let's go back to modify a customer. None of my accounts had interest set up to be charged. So when we walked through those steps, it walked through the steps, but when there was nothing to post, nothing happened, basically. However, if I had had interest set up in any of my accounts, it would have charged interest on past due amounts. Post a reoccurring charge. This is used for multiple reasons. It could be used for you have a direct bill account that has a once-a-month meeting room that goes directly to the direct bill account. You don't want to check it in and have a folio each month, or they have a reoccurring charge that occurs besides the guest's stay. I don't know, it could be a parking charge and what have you. I don't think I have parking built within this data set, but let's say that package actually reads parking. We charge them a flat amount of $25 per month. We go to the parking. I'm going to have to pick something else. I'm going to use miscellaneous. So we would post reoccurring charges to the account specified as specified. Okay, we have about 11 minutes left. I think I've gone through most of the areas of the city ledger. At this point, I'm going to open up the webinar for questions. You can either raise your hand or just simply type in a question. If we don't have any questions, then we'll be ending the webinar a little bit early. Does anybody have any questions for me? Well, let me ask you this. Did anybody raise your hand if you learned something about the city ledger today? Well, I got 2, 3, 4. Great. Glad to hear it. Well, thank you all for attending. My name is Peter. I'm often in support. If you ever have any other questions, go ahead and call the support line and ask for me directly. Thank you for attending and have a great day.